Rahmani is a Syrian-American attorney and the director of advocacy at the Syrian Campaign, an international advocacy organisation which works with Syrian civil society on the ground. He joins me now from California. Thank you so much for your time, Kenan. Now, first of all, I'd like to understand, how do Syrians, and in particular Syrian Kurdish people, view the YPG?
Well, it's very complicated, actually. The YPG has a history in the Syrian conflict, often creating barriers for people. In the siege of Aleppo, for example, people were trying to flee from Aleppo, and the YPG were part of the siege of Aleppo. And many Kurdish activists have been unable to return to their homes in Kobani, in other places in the northeast, because of the YPG, because they have fears that they will be forcibly conscripted into the YPG and be subject to any number of human rights violations by the YPG. But I think this is a bigger conversation about the politics that hasn't been getting a lot of attention in the media. We have now an international community that is pretty much unified in wanting to protect the civilians in northeast Syria. And of course, we all want to protect the civilians in northeast Syria and make sure that they are not caught in the middle of a conflict between Turkey and the YPG. But the international community has stood silent for many years while the Assad regime and Russia have killed thousands and thousands of civilians and displaced millions of people, and we have not seen this kind of unity at the international community.
So in that case, as a Syrian, how do you view this Turkish operation moving into the northeastern parts of Syria and not just threatening the YPG and the SDF, but the civilians there too?
I think that every issue that Turkey has in northeast Syria can be resolved through diplomacy if the United States and the EU put significant investment into making sure that the YPG no longer poses a threat to Syrian civilians, no longer poses a threat to Turkey. And this is something that can be achieved, but it needs a willingness by the international community to address the legitimate security concerns of Turkey. But unfortunately, what we're seeing today, this offensive by Turkey, will destabilize the region, will inflame ethnic tensions between the Arabs and the Kurds. And everyone in the media is talking about this is Turkey attacking the Kurds. The reality is northeast Syria is predominantly Arab region. The casualties of this conflict will be Arab, will be Kurd, will be Assyrian, will be from all kinds of Syrian background. And so I hope that there can be a ceasefire reached. I think it's commendable that President Trump is trying to mediate this conflict, but we need to make sure that the security interests of Turkey are not ignored. Continuing to ignore those security issues will lead us to more conflict down the road.
We know that part of this operation involves creating a safe zone along the border for Turkey for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Syrian refugees to move and rebuild their lives there. Do you see this as a benefit to the Syrian people and Syria as a country, or do you also see within the process of creating this safe zone will be more people displaced?
Well, for sure, people are being displaced. I mean, the news today reflects that 60,000 people have already been displaced in just 2 days of hostilities. The reality is that Turkey has generously hosted millions of refugees on its soil, provided them with great medical attention, addressed their needs as if they were Turks. And I think this is very important to always remember. Many of those people want to return back to Syria. Those who want to return willingly should be able to do so, should be able to go back to an area that's safe. But no one should be resettled against their will. Forcibly resettling refugees from Turkey into Syria is not a good idea, and the conditions are not safe at the moment for people to be forcibly sent back into Syria. There they will be back under the bombing of the Assad regime. They will be subject to possible arrest and torture by the Assad regime, and that's not an acceptable outcome.
Okay, Kenan, we'll have to leave it there. We really appreciate your perspective there. I think the international media could use a Syrian perspective more often. So Kenan Rahmani in California for us. Thank you.